And when I said that Kojève, for example, he shuts down on Freud, but he also closes off any genealogical tracks. And Lacoulabelle and Nancy think that maybe Arendt makes up a certain genealogy. They go so far, and this is a little scandalous when you read it and you think, you go, wow. They say that, did she even make up the Roman polis? So let me just say, to make it very brief, that I'm through and through maybe a genealogical thoroughbred, if I may say so, because Nietzsche loved horses and lost his mind around by embracing a horse. A horse is being beaten. So let me just say that I'm trying to, as a Nietzschean genealogist to a certain extent, I'm trying to see also, I'm trying to analyze on many levels, what are the stakes for Hannah Arendt? Why is she worried, so worried? And you know, she made some political choices that we don't have to agree upon, but that I think are pretty reactionary and distressing. She was against school busing, I mean integration of certain school districts, things that are very, very, you know, we have to be rigorous and try to understand what is the genealogical impulse that goes through these works and is also in some cases suppressed. So I can only stutter and telegraph you a mutilated message because these are huge questions, and I don't, as a Heideggerian, did I say Nietzschean? I practice not closing down shop by offering an answer. So the hermeneutics, as a Gadamerrian, did I say Heideggerian? I offer a hermeneutics of frustration so that we don't feel we've mastered or understood necessarily, you know. But these are little signals that we definitely need to work with. And thank you for injecting the question of memory.
Okay. I have nicht a bias towards recent PhDs. Dr. Cartier.
Thank you, Lily. So I think there's a question in here, but maybe it's just a comment. So
thank you.
I'm interested in the responsiveness that takes place, or that must continue to take place in this pleasure of judging, and also its proximity to forgiveness. It seems as some sort of a inverse S&M relationship between judging and forgiveness. To get off on judging, but also to get off on being judged, I guess. And that's just on the table.
One of the texts that some of us have looked at and some of us will look at is Kleist's Marquise von Uhl. And the question of forgiveness, so carefully elaborated by Derrida, if it should exist, all of history depends on forgiveness in order to move, but I mean, Heinrich Heine, the great poet, said, he's never going to forgive anyone. That's in God's job description. As for him, forget about it. No forgiveness, you know. So in the Kleist story, as in some of the philosophical, Yankelevich and others, the question is, how do you know you've been forgiven? Let's just stick with that because there's so many possibilities. And even if you've been told you've been forgiven, can the act of pardoning or forgiveness be controlled? Maybe someone says they've forgiven you, but they really haven't, they can't. And who's forgiven? The wrongdoer or the one who is now in front of you and says they're sorry, they were horrible, and so on and so forth. So there's all sorts of questions, and I just bring this up without necessarily repairing the disjunctiveness of my response. in order to say that the same kind of treatment and carefulness would have to apply to judgment and punishment, all the while remembering that we're not the originators of this question. It's the name of Kant's third critique of judgment. It is essential to all political structures that try to be retrofitted to some sort of just and democratic understanding of the political, and so on and so forth. So we would have to be very careful in unfolding this, and what's good, you pull an emergency brake, which is good, because maybe we've presupposed, and I have too perhaps, that we know what judgment is, or judging is, or who's judged and how to judge. So you're right to say, let's first try to understand if it takes place, if it can take place, if we know what it is, even though it's such a familiar part of our lexicon and idiomatic habits. Do we even know what we're saying when we say don't be judgmental, don't judge? Can one not judge? Is it even possible? But what is judging?
Dr. Gioppi.
So here at UTS, I've become very excited about a name that I don't want to mention too much as Eric Fromm. And of course, I'm taking escape from freedom, this entire discussion, Fromm's conclusion that freedom is actually more threatening to us than authority. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on this. And I just had one comment to the fellow who was expecting sexual gratification after revolution. I think it's the reverse. I think first you get the sexual satisfaction, then the revolution comes.
He's on your side anyway.
Well, after you're satisfied, you don't need the revolution.
All right. You need sleep.
Depends how old you are. Exactly. My gender.
Yeah,
Also,
or
Dr.
Kierkegaard,
Benz,
the anxiety of freedom, from, and so on. Well, these are maybe twin towers, and I think that's why I brought our attention to Luther, who switches from a prime interest in freedom to justice. He says the idea of freedom is less enticing than that of justice. And Kojève and Arendt appear to corroborate that or agree with that, that we may speak of freedom, but we're enthralled and absolutely invested in judging and so on and so forth. And that's something to be considered, if that's the case. If not, why, and so on.
Dr. Fernando, there's so many doctors here, and all PhDs from EGS. Come on.
Thank you, first of all. I have a sense that since you posit that there's no externality to authority, it's illegitimate, ultimate. It's almost categoristic in that sense, which then suggests that it's a name. And then I guess my question would be, who named? Because if it's a name, it suggests that the one who's under the authority names the authoritarian, for want of a better phrase. Am I on the right page here?
I think so. I think that's important to bear in mind, and maybe when I did my drive-by today and sped through some of the checkpoints, I neglected to emphasize that precisely one of the consequences of the non-transcendental stamp to authority is that in any case, even with a transcendental stamp, it always has to have been, and this is why I suggested that Plato invented it, it's illegitimate, it's illicit, it's a Potemkin village, it's you fake it till you make it. Okay, I'll stop. But you know, you're absolutely right that it's derivative, and this is what Kojève says, even Father is derivative from God the Father. And but all of this is a matter of violent positing.